Today, I'm sharing more of a personal topic of how God healed me from 30 plus years of anger and how he used minimalism to play a big role in it. And I've struggled with anger for as long as I can remember. In high school, I was outspoken, I was sometimes a bully, I was manipulative, just not a really kind person. I was friends with everybody and close friends to almost like very few. I didn't have any behavioral issues. Well, I did, but not to the school eyes, until one day, one of my then close-ish girlfriends said something or did something, I don't even remember, but I got into a physical fight with her at school. I moved out when I was 15 because I was so angry that I needed to have some distance with my family. And I can't even imagine right now having one of her daughters move out as a teenager. So bless my mom for being so patient with her wild child. In my late teens, I was probably 17 or 18, my brother took something and my lid flipped. And all I remember was I took his guitar, swung it at him, and he stopped me right on time. Another time in my late teens, I was working at a grocery store as a cashier, and this one's funny now that I'm thinking about it. This customer said something that triggered me, left my till, and I went, "What you say? You want to come here and fight?" And I do not know how I didn't get in trouble. Looking back, it's very easy for me to see that all these situations were absolutely ridiculous, but I just flipped. Like, it felt so justified in that moment. And my point is, anger was my go-to reaction over little things, over big things, over all the things. And whatever we don't work on, it just doesn't get better on its own. I thought that I was just immature and needed to grow up. And so I grew up, found Christ, got married, and the anger didn't go away. And I get upset over anything, from my husband not reading my mind, from my husband not doing the things that I want him to do, the way I wanted him to do it, from whatever. Anger was just my automatic response. When I became a homemaker, I thought that being home full-time and not having to deal with micromanagers and red tape would somehow make me feel calmer. And it didn't. I absolutely love being present with our first daughter, and I surprised everybody, including myself, in how patient and loving I was to her. But to everybody else around me, like the mess, the chaos, it all kept on feeding into the same old anger. And one day I just hit rock bottom and I didn't want to live like that anymore. And I felt like God was guiding me towards healing. Now, I didn't wake up one day, decided to get rid of all my stuff. It was more of a process that the clutter in our home was adding on to the clutter in my heart and mind. And God started showing me that letting go of all this extra stuff could also help me let go of the anger. The first thing I felt God was teaching me was the whole less clutter equal less chaos, less inventory. I'm sure you've heard of Americano, the whole spark joy thing. And I fell on it by accident. I was signed up to this fitness studio newsletter and they sent an email saying that they were going to hold a Americano workshop. I looked her up. I understood it was some kind of organizational thing, and organization is one of my love languages. So the workshop completely changed my perspective. I came home, ordered her book, devoured it in one day, and the next day I went on my Camaro journey. And Micah is absolutely amazing. He is on board of all of my crazy ideas, and so he gave it a go too. We went through everything in our house, our clothes, our books, our papers, our kimonos, sentimentals, everything. And the more we declutter, the more excitement I felt. And you know, we live in a world that is all about more stuff, more status, more keeping up with the Joneses. And it's so easy to go through the motions. We're fed ads telling us that we need the latest and trendiest, and almost that if we get those things, we'll be happier and then that we'll be doing life right. But it didn't matter how much stuff we bought. I never felt content. It was like trying to fill a bottomless pit. Every new thing just added more clutter, more stress. And decluttering, minimalism, simple living, intentional living, however you want to call it, as I started letting go of things that didn't spark joy, I realized that I wasn't missing out. I was gaining so much more space, more clarity, more freedom. And God was using this whole minimalism journey to teach me that joy doesn't come from things, it came from Him. And when I stopped trying to keep up with everyone around me, even the ones that didn't matter, and that's how sick status is. Like trying to keep up with people we don't even care. But when I stopped doing that, I was able to start focusing on what truly mattered, being obedient to God and following His path for our life. And He showed me that all the stuff that I thought I needed was just getting in the way of the life that He wanted me to live. And turns out that simplifying my stuff simplified my soul too. And so less clutter, less chaos, and more joy. The second thing God taught me was to slow down. And if you're anything like me, this one feels impossible sometimes, all the time. My mind is going so fast that I'm thinking 10 steps ahead. And I had this need to always be productive. And I sometimes do. And to always be doing something, or I'd be feeling guilty. like I wasn't measuring up. To what or to who, I'm not sure. But I was proud saying that I was the queen of multitasking, and we all know that multitasking is a lie. I was constantly in a mode of like, what's next? And it wasn't just exhausting, it was fueling my anger and frustration and stress and all these negative emotions. And this lesson, I learned only this last March. And we've been minimalist since 2018. And so up until March this year, I felt like I was saying yes to everything. Events, volunteering, taking on tasks, like whatever. Because if I didn't, it meant that I wasn't doing enough, or I wasn't a good enough like wife and mother and friend. But God's been teaching me that I don't need to constantly be productive to have value. And I can say no and still be walking in my purpose. So in March, I decided to clear off a calendar of all recurrent activities, like all the girls swimming lessons, all their skating lessons, the Bible study I agreed to lead, just everything. And when I started to prioritize things and people outside of our home, I knew that my priorities were out of whack and I need to reset. And funny enough, the Bible study that I was leading was talking about pruning season. And I talked about some of the things that I quit doing in another video that I'll link below. And in that same time, God showed me that I was blessed raising our children, and yet I wasn't even there with them, because slowing down also means being present. I used to constantly think ahead, like we're reading and my mind is racing through my to-do list and my grocery list and my tomorrow schedule, just every list possible. And I was never fully present. And here's a big thing I learned. I don't have to be performing to be worthy. I don't have to constantly be achieving and accomplishing something to be living intentionally. It's okay to rest. It's okay to breathe. It's okay to just be. God didn't call me to have a life of constant busyness. He called me to have a life of peace. And I can find that peace when I stop running. I thought that slowing down meant I was being lazy. But really, it's an act of trust. It's trusting that God can and will take care of what's left undone, even if I'm not constantly hustling. And that, it's incredibly freeing. The third lesson God taught me is that minimalism is so much more than things. And you know, like when we hear the word of minimalism, we often think it's about decluttering and living with fewer things, and that's what I thought. And that's part of it. But the deeper I got into it, the more I realized that minimalism is so much more than getting rid of all your stuff. It's about simplifying every area in our life, our mind, our time, our relationships, so we can make room for what truly matters. For example, when I used to say yes to everything, it was because I didn't want to miss out. But really, all of the busyness was cluttering up my life so much that no amount of decluttering our home could fix. And minimalism just taught me it's okay to let go of things that don't serve a purpose. Physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally, all of it. It's okay to let go of commitment, expectations, and relationships that drain us. I stopped doing things out of obligation, and I started being more intentional about how I spend my time and energy, and I started investing my time in what was in alignment with our values and the people that lifted me up. Basically, everything that I would say yes to, the more I said no to what was important to me. My faith, my husband, and the girls. And minimalism had also forced me to confront my emotional clutter that I was holding on to. We don't always think about it, but just like physical clutter, emotional baggage can weight us down and keep us from living the life that God has for us. And I had to ask myself questions like, why do I feel the need to always do it all? And all the time. Why can't I just let go of perfection? Is progress and growth not enough to my standards? Because it sure is to God's standards. It was the process of realizing that it's okay not to be everything to everyone. God didn't expect perfection. He expects us to be faithful with what He's given us and to let go of the rest. What I'm receiving is minimalism is really about making space for what matters the most. And that's something that God had really to work on me, because I don't personally think that minimalism is just a lifestyle. It's a mindset shift. It's really learning to stop filling our homes with stuff, our schedule with activities, and our mind with things that don't bring us closer to God. And in doing that, in being intentional, we make room for the abundance that He's been wanting to give us all this time. And it's a path of freedom, of peace, of intentional living, both in our home and in our heart. So yeah, because of those 3 lessons God taught me about minimalism, I healed my anger. But really, God's the one who healed me. He used minimalism, slow living, and intentional choices to teach me that less stuff, less rushing, and less control brings more peace and more freedom. I'm not perfect. There are still days that my lid flips, but I'm so much better at having self-control and letting go. Thanks for hanging out, and if you're on your own journey of healing, or if God's been teaching you a similar lesson, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this video. We'll talk to you soon.